Nigeria's population estimated to hit 400 million by 2050. Now is the time to find a sustainable food security system that can cater for the nation's vast population. At the Stakeholders Forum in Abuja, how to secure the buy-in of the state government in the food sufficiency drive of the federal government was discussed through the implementation of the Right to Food Act.
Facilitated by the Global Initiative for Food and Ecosystem Preservation, the forum brought together government officials, NGOs working in the food system space, climate change, representative agriculture ministries at the state levels, and other stakeholders. It was essentially to discuss the tenets of the Right to Food Act and how to facilitate its implementation across the 36 states and the FCT, and focus on improved budgetary allocation to agriculture, livestock development in a manner that shares the burden of food production among all tiers of government. Apart from direct fields of agriculture, shared insights, recommendations expected to help government improve the nation's food system to combat hunger.
Initiative for food security and ecosystem. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Michael David. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
We're talking about food security. Now, can you help us make a sense of where
we congratulating Nigeria for being one of the very first countries in Africa that has food as a basic human right under the Constitution. So in 2023, the Constitution was amended. Right to Food Act was passed and signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari. And under that act, we have food and food security as a basic human right in Nigeria. So that is a major step. Having food in the Constitution is a big step. But now, talking about food security in the country as it is presently, you would agree with me that the food inflation, the number of Nigerians who are food poor, that is having no access to food, the number of beggars moving around with plates begging for food across the country will clearly tell you that there is hunger in the land. And if you see the statistics that have been given, the Constitution, the Right to Food Act explicitly states that government should guarantee the availability of food, the accessibility of food, and the affordability of food. So the question is, with the huge food inflation, is food affordable? Is it accessible? Is it available?
Okay, now talking about these efforts you're talking about, can you give us your assessment? You just mentioned, why are you talking about your assessment? You talked about the efforts of the present government in place. Let's take it from there. Give us a highlight of if actually they are strong enough to meet the challenges on ground.
So the Constitution has already provided, that is the Right to Food Act. It's already a constitution, right? It's already a law in the country. As soon as the president was sworn in, he declared a state of emergency on food security. So that was a clear direction to show the focus of this administration. Now, whether that state of emergency has translated into availability of food for Nigerians is a different conversation. The fact is that there are some policies or steps that the government is taking, but I will say a lot needs to be done, especially by the state government and the state governors, because a lot of conversation around food and food security I mean, if anyone is hungry, is blaming President Tinubu, is blaming.
Let's not go into technicals here. Let's just talk about it briefly. What do we actually mean by livestock genetics? What does it actually mean before we go further?
Yeah, when we talk about livestock genetics or the breed in this genetics, we are not just talking about breeding. Just improving the breeds that we have. We have our local breeds, different kind of Bokolo and Fulani Gudale. They are our local breeds. But when it comes to milk production, they are not producing enough. And when it comes to meat, the body carcass and body weight, they are not enough. And that is why in livestock genetics, we are bringing the semen from Viking, which to be able to improve both in the dairy and the beef section. In the dairy, we want to be able to improve, to be able to breed our local cows by inseminating with this semen that we are bringing different breeds so that we can be able to improve the breed. Today is a process. It's not something that is going to happen automatically, but it is very, very good as we start now, because with the Ministry of Livestock that the President created, is a very way forward that their focus is to be able to improve their livestock so that they are able to have the commercial value of livestock. We have a lot of livestock in Nigeria, especially when it comes to cow head, but we are not minimizing the profit for it because we have not improved our breed.
So now, can you throw more light? How and why do we actually need to embrace genetic insemination, to boost livestock production in Nigeria? How do we go about this?
Yeah, the reason why it is very, very necessary, because the world is going very far, because in different countries today, we make from different countries, especially from Germany, from Netherlands, and from Denmark. And that's where we are using this. Today, the milk production, when it comes to fresh milk, we can able to have good beef cows that can able to give good beef, so that we can able to export it to other countries, and we can even feed us also, because today you see, yes, we are talking about food production and food to provide food. This is something that we have to engage, we have to embrace it. It is something that we cannot be able to escape away from it, because the world is going, evolving and improving. Different countries are doing that. So at least this process that we have started today, at least is a very good way forward, because the government has provided a platform by creating the Ministry of Livestock, and that is and even the man who is a minister is a farmer also. He knows the importance of what to be able to improve the local breeds.
Now you've laid bare the importance, the necessity why we should embrace this technology. Now let's look at your organization, the Livestock Genetics Africa. It is a leading firm, in this effort. Now what have you been able to do in this regard, talking about helping local breeders, to modernize their operation, to achieve these goals you've talked about, these good things you've talked about?
Yeah, there's a lot of things we have been doing, especially in different states. We are doing in Kaduna, but presently now there are a lot of things that we are doing. We call it Sadiana livestock program. So we are in Taraba State. We are trying to organize the local farmers by making them to understand the importance to improve their breed, and we want to use at least Sadiana, at least Taraba, as a key point, as a pilot center, so that we increase the breed, so that environment that they will be able to produce enough milk, enough meat. And as I said, we as a company, we have organization for that donation. We have both semen for both dairy and beef. And when it came to beef, we try as much as we bring in the best bull semen that we could able to improve our dairy sector, especially when it comes to giving us milk. Because today, feeding children and children having milk in the school, we have to improve that breed to be able to have good milk and both in beef. So that's why Livestock Genetics is trying to be able to engage different local farmers, both even in different areas. And there's a lot of people who have invested or even engaged our service, especially in Jigawa. But there's a farm called Malamali Farm in Jigawa. He has engaged our service. We are able to help him to improve Abuja company and different other companies which are helping to able to engage their service, both in service buying cement from us and we are incinerating their farms. So that's what we are doing. And to engage local farmers, the most important is to create awareness and make them to understand the importance for them to understand that they have to embrace this breeding program by having to improve their breed. We are able to know that we can able to see that locally now today most people who have these cows are local farmers and they have it. There's a primitive way of handling by taking the cows to go to different areas to have but we try to as much as we try to store them. Yes, to have their cows in one place, to inseminate them and be able to know that these cows are good benefit for them, not only just for having sake but preventive but to be able to have them to be able to improve their life and improve their family.
Well, the good news now is that the government of the day, has a very active political will that we can describe very vibrant. We have the new ministry, the Ministry of Livestock Development. Now, how do we take advantage of this? How do we use this new ministry to enhance the export of livestock products are doing in the country?
Yeah, like I said, this is a very good step forward, and it is a very, if I could have to say, it's a very kudos to the government, at least the government of Tinubu, for making that very good giant step to be able to create that ministry, to be able to see, because we see the potentials in the livestock sector, and we see that there's a great potentials in the area of improving the life of the women and getting the work, and even creating employment and generating even foreign exchange when you sell this product outside. So that is a very good.
That's our package this week. Thanks for being part of it. My name is Justin Berry. We'll say bye for now.
Traditions are messages that are transmitted orally from one generation to another. The messages may be passed down through speech or song and may take the form of folktales and fables. Epic histories and narratives, proverbs or wise sayings of our fathers. The development of African literature leads to various reflections on the future of the continent and its population. Self-knowledge and consciousness of one's cultural identity are two major factors in the process of the formation of one's personality. What then is African literature?
African literature is that literature written by Africans about themselves, about their cultural heritage, about the societal norms and values, and about especially the situational realities in Africa. If you look at works written by African writers such as Shringa, Achebe, likes of Salman Usmani, the likes of and the likes of Miziki Yatango, what you find is an attempt to reconceptualize what literature is, especially because before now, what you have is a misinterpretation of what African literature is. So with the emergence of post-colonial literary studies, scholars have come to realize that African
better knowledge of the history of the African continent that has been marginalized for a long time, but has succeeded in surviving and moving forward. African literature is highly diversified, even though it shares some similarities. In fact, the common denominator of the cultures of the African continent is undoubtedly the oral tradition. Africa, though there is no doubt to the fact that there was also interaction with Western traditions. Writers in Africa today owe much to African oral traditions and to those authors who have occupied the space between the oral and written traditions, especially
Hello, I'm Esther Gibouet. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's
Gaza's future in White House meeting. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns that a ceasefire with Hamas will end and intense fighting would resume in Gaza if more hostages are not freed by Saturday. And government leaders and technology companies gather in Paris to discuss the future of artificial intelligence. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54.
U.S. President Donald Trump is doubling down on his demand that Jordan's King Abdullah II support his plan to take over Gaza and permanently take in Palestinians. Tuesday's White House meeting came amid a possible collapse of the fragile ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has this report.
Palestinians in the Gaza Strip fear the return of war after Hamas's threat to delay the next planned release of Israeli hostages and U.S. President Donald Trump's call to cancel the ceasefire. As he hosted Jordan's King Abdullah II at the White House Tuesday, Trump doubled down on his plan to take over Gaza.
I think it's going to be something that's going to be magnificent for the Palestinians. They're going to be in love with it. I think very well with real estate. I can tell you about real estate. They're going to be in love with it.
The Palestinians, along with Jordan, Egypt, and various other countries, have rejected Trump's plan to forcibly relocate an estimated 1.9 million Gaza residents into neighboring countries. But other than saying he would immediately receive 2,000 children in Gaza sick with cancer and other illnesses, King Abdullah declined Trump's...
Egypt and the Arab countries, we're being invited by Mohammed bin Salman to discussions in Riyadh. I think the point is how do we make this work in a way that is good for everybody.
It's a high-stakes meeting for Abdullah, who must maintain ties with a key ally whom Jordan depends on for foreign assistance. Trump hinted Monday he would withhold aid, but backtracked on Tuesday. Many Jordanians are descendants of displaced Palestinians. If Abdullah supports Trump's plans, it will create major political and economic problems and allow Hamas to enter, says Gabe Al-Omari of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy.
Hamas could create not only
domestic problems in terms of terror, but also there's the fear that Jordan might then become a staging ground for attacks on Israel. All of these things may create very, very severe threats to Jordan's stability and maybe even survival.
Al-Amari said Trump's takeover plan removes the incentive for Hamas to continue the ceasefire. On Monday, the U.S.-designated terror group threatened to delay the next planned release of hostages, alleging Israeli truce violations. Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded with the same ultimatum.
The decision I passed unanimously in the cabinet is this. Hamas does not return our hostages by Saturday noon. The ceasefire is imminent, and the IDF will return to intense fighting until Hamas is finally defeated.
Israel will hand over Gaza to the U.S. after the war, Trump has said.
We're not going to buy anything. We're going to have it. We're going to keep it, and we're going to make sure that there's going to be peace, and there's not going to be any problem, and nobody's going to question it.
These Gazans would disagree. Patsy Daguswara, News, Washington.
Fighting will resume in Gaza if more hostages held by the militant group are not freed by Saturday. So far, Hamas has released 21 hostages in a series of exchanges for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners.
In light of the Hamas announcement of its decision to violate the agreement and not release our hostages, last night I ordered the IDF to gather forces inside and around the Gaza Strip. This operation is being carried out at this time. It will be completed in the very near future.
That was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Democratic lawmakers are criticizing what they call the Trump administration's extreme efforts to reshape the U.S. government, vowing to oppose those changes despite limited political capital in both chambers of the U.S. Congress. Republicans, however, defend the move, saying attempt to stop fraud and waste our long overdue. VOA congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more.
A second week of protests from Democratic lawmakers concerned about President Donald Trump's attempts to reshape the U.S. government. Despite limited political capital in both chambers of the U.S. Congress, Democrats vowing to fight what they call the Trump administration's extreme efforts to close down government agencies and immediately lay off federal workers.
If you want to make cuts, then you do it through a debate in Congress, not lawlessly by just implementing it. We want waste, we want to make sure waste isn't done, but they're cutting out the meat that's going to hurt millions of American families.
Republicans have defended the work of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, led by billionaire Elon Musk, saying attempts to stop fraud and waste are long overdue.
The Democrat Party's tantrums are exactly why they hold no majority in Congress and their candidate is not in the White House. DOGE is rightly pulling back the curtains that have been closed for years, and the outrage we are seeing across the aisle is baffling but not surprising, given their record of mismanagement of taxpayer dollars.
Democrats are vowing to fight for protections for government agencies or withhold their votes in upcoming government funding talks.
There's very little appetite to help Republicans when we don't trust that Donald Trump's going to care, or even, we don't know, for our own defense. With Elon Musk and his unelected friends running through and combing through the federal system.
Democrats have had some success temporarily stopping Trump's executive orders in the U.S. court system. But one analyst told VOA other changes will take time.
And we haven't yet seen the grassroots mobilization yet. But that's the one most indirect to levers of power within Washington to reach members of Congress or enough members of Congress.
But Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said Tuesday the Democratic Party has very little power.
There's no identified leader of the party. They don't have a clear vision. They seem rudderless.
March 14th. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
The Trump administration says it is carrying out a review of foreign aid programs and the main U.S. Agency for Humanitarian Assistance, USAID. Veronica Balderas-Iglesias reports on what changes critics of the agency are proposing.
With his America First approach, U.S. President Donald Trump has promised sweeping changes to how the United States interacts with the rest of the world.
The simple concept, America First, it doesn't mean you hate anybody else. It means that you have leadership, and President Trump has been very clear about this, that puts the interests of American citizens first.
In that context, President Trump ordered a 90-day freeze starting January 20th to all foreign assistance pending a government review, with some exceptions which U.S. Secretary Marco Rubio recently clarified.
We've issued waivers for programs that make all the sense in the world. They make America safer. They make America stronger. If it's providing food or medicine or anything that is saving lives and is immediate and urgent, you're not included in the freeze.
The U.S. Agency for International Development, which manages most of the foreign assistance programs, is under intense scrutiny, which some analysts say is necessary.
There's maybe parts of the U.S. Agency for International Development that might need to be downsized or repurposed to try to refocus them on U.S. national security objectives rather than merely promoting cultural norms that we find to be.
USAID contractor Nieta would not give her last name.
We work not by forcing people to have respect for America or by telling people to have certain values, but by supporting them in the ways that they feel that they need, and in doing so, making the world a better place for all of us.
More targeted USAID investments in foreign countries could yield better returns, says defense policy expert Brian Clark.
Investments in humanitarian aid, even if they don't necessarily create
policy plan for AIDS relief, or PEPFAR, but local clinics did not immediately reopen. Veronica Balderas-Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
The 27-nation European Union and Canada are vowing to stand firm against U.S. President Donald Trump's move to impose 25% tariffs on their steel and aluminum exports. Trump says the steel and aluminum tariffs will take effect on March 12th. In response, EU officials say they could target such U.S. products as the bourbon, jeans, peanut butter, and motorcycles, much of it produced in Republican states that supported Trump in his election victory. President Trump imposed the steel and aluminum tariff to boost the fortunes of U.S. producers. The EU has scheduled an emergency virtual meeting on Wednesday to shape the bloc's response. Despite the M23 rebels calling for the resumption of the schools in the eastern part of Congo city of Goma, which they captured in January, classrooms are still empty. Many families are fearful of sending their children back to bullet-ridden buildings. VOA's Philip Alexiou explains.
As the conflict in eastern Congo continues, the continuing displacement and movement of mass amounts of people does not stop. Camps are set up and people are moved out. Aid agencies are doing all they can. It becomes overwhelming. Yet a whistle blows announcing the beginning of school in this part of Goma, with only a few students attending where normally 1,200 would be in class on this day. School Director Rose Victorine Sedira Mwimbo says school is badly hit, and the fighting between the M23 rebels and the Congolese forces have left families displaced and fearful of sending their children back.
Parents call us here and there to say they've moved their children to safer places. They don't dare send them to school because they still fear for their safety, and the children themselves are traumatized. They don't know how to navigate a world filled with the sounds of explosions, bombs, and stories like these. It pains us. We were almost approaching the end of the exams.
Goma fell into the hands of M23 rebels on January 27th. The region has since been the site of violent fighting between the Congolese army and M23 fighters, who Congo alleges are backed by Rwanda, a claim Rwanda denies. Despite a call from the M23 rebels for schools to resume normal operations, uncertainty remains for many families. Ongoing violence has created an atmosphere of fear that has not only emptied classrooms, but also damaged critical infrastructure. Bullet marks pockmarked school buses, while classrooms bear the scars of explosive devices. Some schools have been used as refuge centers for displaced families, further complicating efforts to restore normalcy.
Will the children be able to focus on their lessons after everything they've witnessed? The bomb fragments, the destruction, seeing where the bullets landed. Will the students fully settle back into their routines? We ask ourselves these questions because it's not easy. Even we, the staff, feel scared. How will we continue with the children? Only good news.
In other news, the leadership of Niger is set to hold a national convention February 15th to 19th to map out its long-awaited political transition following the July 2023 coup that deposed President Mohamed Bazoum. Military leader General Abdurrahman Chani says the dialogue will be inclusive, set government's priorities, and determine the transition timeline. The latest offerings of electric vehicles took center stage in the U.S. at the 2025 Chicago Auto Show. VOA's Ken Faribault reports.
It sounds like an engine, and it might feel like an engine. But what propels the new Dodge Charger isn't an internal combustion engine at all. It's a fully electric vehicle, or EV. And while the sounds and smell of tires burning rubber are real, the hallmarks of a throaty exhaust are artificial.
I think you will forget that it's an EV.
Ryan Nagoti is vice president for interior design at Stellantis, which owns the Dodge brand. The Charger has long been an icon of the gasoline-powered American muscle car era. Nagoti says turning it into an EV, with certain models exceeding $60,000, was a leap of faith for Dodge.
We know that that's where, the country's heading, and it takes time.
A tax credit of up to $7,500, part of the Biden administration's 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, helped make pricey EVs manufactured in America more affordable. President Donald Trump has signaled plans to end the credit. Nagoti says those incentives weren't a major factor in the Charger's EV development.
You're getting a different customer coming to this vehicle, right? That's not their first and foremost thought.
Even so, incentives helped fuel an EV buying surge last year in the U.S., Cox Automotive reports, with about 1.3 million new vehicles sold.
Vehicles, so that includes hybrids, plug-in hybrids, fuel cell EV, and electric vehicles.
Matt Troyer is a product specialist with Japanese automaker Toyota.
Almost 30% of what we sell is now some kind of electrified vehicle,
none of which qualify for the current federal EV tax credit. Toyota's only fully electric vehicle in North America, the BZ4X, also doesn't qualify because it's manufactured outside the United States. In December, Toyota announced it was cutting the price of its BZ4X by up to $6,000.
We're seeing that electric vehicles are getting cheaper.
Megan Lakchora is the electric vehicle officer for the state of Illinois, which is continuing a $4,000 state rebate for purchasing a fully electric vehicle. She joined Melissa Wash.
We have $100 million in rebates that are being made available in 2025 for customers to adopt EVs. And that's going to be for all customers, our residential customers, our commercial customers, and public sector customers.
While uncertainty surrounds the future of federal incentives to buy EVs, Troyer says customers tell
here too, and they love doing good things for the environment.
Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Chicago.
Government leaders and technology chiefs recently gathered at the Artificial Intelligence Action Summit in Paris to discuss the future of AI and explore the use of big data. Leaders called for rules and international governance. He joins us now with more. Hello, Paul.
Thanks, Esther. Heads of state and technology executives are convened in Paris to discuss safely embracing artificial intelligence amid mounting resistance to heavy-handed red tape that businesses say
broadcast with large volumes and coming in different structures, videos, text, voice, and it requires a lot of...
When we talk about analyzing, what we mean exactly to actually break it down and make sense of it?
This data that is coming in has hidden meaning behind there, but it takes experts to try and first pre-process it, clean it up, because depending on the goal that you want to achieve with that data, you have to analyze this data by pre-processing it, cleaning it up. You have to make sure the data that you're trying to process is relevant to what you want to achieve. So that is how data analysts come into play, to try and analyze this data, pre-process it, clean it up before analyze or predict whatever goal you want to achieve.
Recently here in the United States, there was a lot of concern. The U.S. government, the U.S. Congress and the Senate, they all voted overwhelmingly to ban TikTok because TikTok is owned by ByteDance. ByteDance is a Chinese company. One of them, the Chinese government is collecting data on Americans. From your vantage point, how do we stop something like that from happening?
There is always a concern of privacy and who owns the data. If, for example, I sign up on TikTok and put my profile and information, given that the different regulations that cut across the different countries, so it's important for the different regulations or regulators in the different countries to put into consideration
This is the news in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, ahead of the 38th ordinary session of the Assembly of the African Union. Heads of state and government. In a statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, President Tinubu will deliver a speech at the summit-level meeting of the African Union Peace on the continent, including the escalation of conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The President will participate in meetings on health financing, establishing an African credit rating agency, and climate change. This year's AU Summit, under the theme Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations, focuses on reparatory justice and racial healing. President Tinubu is expected back to Abuja on Monday, February 17. President Donald Trump has announced that U.S., Russian and Ukrainian officials will meet at a security conference in Munich this Friday for talks on how to end the Russia-Ukraine war. The U.S. President announced the three-way meeting in Munich during a press conference on Thursday without giving any further details. However, Russia, which is not officially attending the annual forum in Germany, did not comment, and a senior Ukrainian official said talks with Russians in Munich were not expected. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky admitted it was not very pleasing that Trump had spoken to Putin before him, warned that Ukraine would not agree to any peace deal proposed by the US and Russia without Kyiv's involvement. Many schools and shops were shuttered across eastern Canada. Flights were delayed and driving was treacherous. Canadians reveled in a major snowstorm. A winter storm started blanketing the capital, Ottawa, Wednesday evening, as well as major cities Toronto, Montreal, and Quebec City. It brought a significant snowfall of up to 30 centimeters, 1 foot, of snow overnight Wednesday to Thursday, causing blowing snow and limiting visibility, according to Canada's Weather Service. Airlines cancelled or delayed flights at Canada's largest airport in Toronto, according to weather officials. The average amount of snow falling in eastern Canada has been mostly trending down in recent years. And those are the stories trending at this time. Thanks for being part of it.
Senate and House of Representatives passed 2025 appropriation totaling 54.99 trillion naira. But what does this mean for the key sectors of the nation's economy? The political season is in full swing with defections and internal disciplinary processes in activation mode. Plus, group force the proposed creation of new states in Nigeria. Well, these are now on the program. I'm Fisai Ogunfuyi. Welcome. The Senate and House of Representatives have passed the 2025 appropriations totaling 54.99 trillion naira. The amount indicated an increase of more than 700 billion naira on the earlier submitted figure of 54.2 trillion naira.
Being for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation
the total sum of 54 trillion 990 billion.
A breakdown of the 2025 budget of Restoration, Securing Peace and Building Prosperity shows capital expenditure put at 23.9 trillion naira, while recurrent has 13 trillion naira, and debt servicing is to go up 14.3 trillion naira, among others.
I hope that this appropriation bill will contribute to moving Nigeria forward and will assist Mr. President in his renewed hope agenda to renew the hope of Nigerians in all facets of life, from infrastructure to security and to provision of even respect for this country from the international community.
The Joint Committee on Appropriations, while presenting the report on the 2025 budget for consideration, explained that President Tinubu had, following the suspension of aid by the U.S. government, provided $200 million to fill the funding gap.
The President took proactive measure and made a new provision of $200 million, which is equivalent to about 300 billion naira in the service-wide bill to fill the gap created by the United States government suspension of the intervention to the global health sector.
And also we have some genuine requests from some agencies like INEC, NFIU, DSS and other stuff. So that's what to make it 700 billion additional.
President Tinubu presented the 2025 budget to a joint session on the 18th of December 2024.
From a bone of contention to consensus building, that is the story of the four tax reform bills of the current administration, which have now skewed second reading at the House of Representatives. A debate among the lawmakers this week paved the way for the second reading of that bill.
An increase in the tax exemption threshold for small businesses with annual turnover of 25 million. So if you are at that level, 25 million to 50 million will be the threshold under which you will be exempted from tax.
The general principle of these bills will allow us the level of funding that we need as a nation to grow into the next generation. When I look at the tax bill itself, sir, it is so state-centric. It gives a lot of more money to states. Federal government reduces its 15% to 10% and gives the 5% to states.
If Nigeria, with over 250 million people, has about half of its population as women, I see this bill and this fiscal reform as a good time for Nigerian women.
Other lawmakers expressed areas of concern that should be addressed at public hearings.
There is a concern over burdening the taxpayers. Then also there may be some level of exclusion where technology cannot reach.
One good thing is that innovation is coming. It could be difficult, but it is desirable. And so whilst we oppose some of the letters of the law, we support the spirit of the law in toto.
Joining us is public affairs analyst Judy Ojo. We've been watching the reports. Let's start from the budget. A bigger budget means wider scope in ensuring deliverables are actualized. But in your experience, what are the hurdles between concepts and actuality?
Thank you, Fisayo. Happy Valentine's Day. Over 2 million barrels per day, the exchange rate of 1,500. The fact that the budget assumes that inflation will be reduced to 15% from the current 34%. Headline inflation, food inflation is already over 40%. So I don't see the magic in all of this. But as I've said on several media platforms, budget is just an estimate. And as we see in economics, ceteris paribus, all things being equal. We know all things are never equal. But so far
suffice to say that this budget is at least we are having about 30% for capital expenditure, and then all the service rivals and things that needed to be taken care of in 2025 has been considered. So let's hope for the best in terms of implementation. Cannot depend on foreign donation, foreign aid for life. USAID has been working in Nigeria for decades. They've been supporting the health sector, the education sector, the democracy and good governance forum in different parts of the country, talking about it, but we seem to be going towards a consensus, at least from the reactions on the floor of the House. Of course, I foresee this kind of consensus after the Nigerian Governors Forum had that tete-a-tete with the Presidential Committee on Fiscal and Tax Reform. So that's headed by Taiwo Oyedele. When they met last month and they issued that 5-point agenda where they agreed on some the distribution formula for the value-added tax, as well as also suspended the whole concept of removal or closing down tech fund, Nasemi, NIDA and all of that. Interestingly, that has been a recurring decimal after the elections, and it doesn't surprise me any longer. Under the 16 years of PDP government at the center, we always see that after the elections, the four cycle of elections which were won by the PDP, I'm referring to the presidential election, there's 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, that were won by PDP. After all of these general elections, you see the bandwagon where most of the opposition members empties themselves into PDP, and that's when former national chairman Okwezili Nwodo, I guess he was the one that says that PDP was going to govern for 60 years, but it ended up being 60 years. And this time around, it's APC that is reaping the benefit of bandwagon politics. So almost half of the Labour Party members who won in 2023 are emptied into PDP, into APC, and even members of the PDP, as weeks ago, Senator Nodinwoko left Delta North Senatorial District for PDP to APC. So it's always very interesting, and that validates Fisayo. That validates the postulation that political watchers have always been making, that the political parties are just special purpose vehicles meant to win elections. After elections, everybody becomes their own person, and the next election becomes the primary focus. So you could see that ahead of 2027, there is alignment and realignment of forces. Many of those who are defecting from Labour Party or PDP are citing irreconcilable differences and all of that. The differences will not occur before the general election. Unfortunately, that to them they are now seeing differences, but some of these cases have already been dragged to court, because I recall some of the PDP, and I don't know whether Labour Party has dragged anybody to court, but PDP seems to have dragged some people to court for defecting, that there was no division, that you showed the clip of headed by Chief Tommy Kini. And then the leadership crisis that have also hit the Labour Party, so much so that there was a stakeholders meeting in Roma here, which the Aburi faction has disregarded, and then the court saying Aburi is the chairman, and then the other party going to Supreme Court to challenge that. All of this has paved way for the mass exodus that we have seen from these opposition parties to the ruling party. Whether this is good for our democracy is debatable, I, as a political scientist, does not believe it's obvious way for us, because we now have more like I said earlier, a de jure multi-party democracy, but a de facto one-party state, because it's not like APC and others, not like APC, PDP, Labour Party, as we saw during the lead up to the 2023 general election.
Okay, let's quickly take this last report. Perhaps we have opportunity to say a line or two before we close shop. The Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education says the proposed creation of 31 new states may strangulate the Nigerian economy. The center said this in reaction to the House of Representatives Committee on Constitution Review's proposal after receiving requests for the creation of 31 new states across the country to improve regional representation if approved. The restructuring would increase the number of states in Nigeria from 36 to 67, surpassing United States' 50 state system.
Additional states could have far-reaching implications for the distribution of resources and governance in Nigeria. The establishment of new states will lead to increased administrative costs and further strain the already limited financial resources of the federal and state governments. However, the sole aspect of the proposal that we believe merits serious consideration by our legislators is the constitutional recognition of Abuja as the 37th state within the Nigerian Federation. This recognition will not only symbolize the inclusion of the federal capital territory within the broader national framework, but also address the pressing concerns of the indigenous people, that is the original inhabitants.
Not so long to close now, but do you have a comment on this creation or this proposal for creation?
Fisayo, my thoughts are already in black and white in my column in the Punch this week.
I'll grab a copy.
But my own position is that I'm one of the antagonists of additional state creation. It doesn't serve us well. We are already running a very heavy cost of governance. So creating additional political units does not serve. What we need is actually good governance. If at all we want to alter the constitution, let's devolve power from some of the powers concentrated in the exclusive legislative list. Let's bring them to current legislative list. The issues around resource control. If you are able to have the state having more, being in control of their resources, I'm sure that the states will be viable. The 36 states we currently have, about three-quarters of them are not viable. And this is what research and empirical study have shown, that only 5 states can actually do without federal allocation. So in such a scenario, you cannot be balkanizing and bifurcating the states under the guise that you want to bring governance to. The president has already given financial autonomy to the local government. So if we have autonomous and independent local government, I think the dividends of democracy that we want to percolate to the grassroots will become manifest.
Time is not our friend on the program. Many thanks to GD, public affairs analyst, taking us through different scenarios and of course developments in the economic and political sense. Thank you so much for being a part of it, and thank you for watching as well. Perhaps we leave the issue of state creation on this, permit the pun on this line. What is the current state of the states that we have if you need more states? That has been our political update for today. Between now and Tuesday when coming away again, please play your policies for the greater good and keep it locked on Africa's largest and finest and Nigerian television authority for news, reviews, previews and interviews. Bye-bye now.
NTA, you have to
Do you want your school to be known for your achievements or activities? Then look no further. At NTA Knowledge on Star Times Channel 359, we will showcase your school's graduation, excursion, inter-house sports, community service, school's registration of new intakes, and more. For enquiries and advert placement, please dial 0805-906-0657 337-4201. NTA Knowledge, learning to broaden horizon.
who's a veterinary doctor, and going to give us a